Hey everybody, it's good to be with y'all again. Last week I was able to participate at the Utah Dental Association. I was one of their vendors and I had a booth there. And the short story I'm about to share with you, I've already spoken with the responsible individual um, and was able to address some of my concerns. So whatever I'm about to share with you, I shared it with. I had that difficult conversation. But there were three lessons that I learned, and hopefully I can pass on those lessons with you. First lesson that I learned is to leave your patients with options. Be creative and flexible with your treatment plans and the service that you provide your patients. The second one is to get ahead of the communication. Don't let things happen before you communicate with your patients. And the third one is to refine your decision-making process. So, like I said, last week I was able to participate at the Utah Dental Association. I was one of their vendors, and it was a great experience. I reached out to a buddy 6 weeks ahead of the event, and I told him, "Hey, I need, one of those tablecloths that throw tablecloths that go over your table. You would display my company name, prefer, and my logo." And so he understood what I needed, said that he could provide it. He said that, yeah, 6 weeks playing time, I can get it to you in 2 weeks. Well, as time went on, I have other things that I needed to take care of. I had my own small business to run. And as time went on, I was kind of getting a little anxious because he wasn't responding. I would reach out to him and follow up saying, "Hey, how are things going with the tablecloth? I ordered 2 of them." Well, 2 weeks went by, didn't hear from him. A month went by, didn't hear from him. And then I told him, "Hey, I haven't heard from you. I'm about to go forward and find another vendor who could provide the same service." Well, it was at that point when he reached out to me and said, "No, no, no, we're working on it. I already put the order through. I've already made payments to my suppliers. It will be delivered to you on time." Well, at that point, I only had 2 weeks left. Well, for the next week, I kept asking him, "Hey, how things going? How things going?" Well, he told me that the supplier that he usually goes through ghosted him. And at that point, I was a little bit frustrated, irritated because he had ghosted me. He wasn't giving me a heads up. He wasn't giving me information on how things were progressing. It was less than a week before the event was going to happen when I needed to set up for the conference that he reaches out to me, and all his text said was, "I haven't heard from the vendor. Sorry, I'm unable to provide you with the tablecloths." And I was thinking, whoa, 1 week ahead of the event, and now you're telling me? Like, this is supposed to be your wheelhouse. You're supposed to know how fast the turnaround is supposed to be, and at some point, you can't just leave me with 1 week. And so I scramble, and in 15 minutes, and at this point, it really got to me. In 15 minutes, I was able to identify a supplier who was able to provide me with not what I initially wanted. It's like, wow, I went 5 weeks of obstacles and slow processing and pretty terrible customer service to, wow, I found a vendor who was able to provide me with alternative solution within 2 days, and I was able to identify them in 15 minutes, and which was pretty incredible. So going back to the lessons that I learned and how we can apply it to dentistry, leaving your patients with options, being creative and flexible. You might recommend that a patient go through with a crown, right? And a crown for a patient might average about $1,800. Well, the patient might have reservations of coughing up $1,800 right away. And you offer to them, well, we can do a tooth extraction right now, which might be a temporary solution for you, and that would be $180. You don't need to come in for an implant, which would cost you upwards of over $2,000. So I've seen this many times. I've got plenty of family members walking around with gaps in their teeth, holes. I went to dinner with family, and I looked over. We were eating hamburgers, and they're eating hamburgers with 2 forks. and they're just mincing it apart before they not even chew it, they just swallow it. Might as well just bring a blender with you. And to me, that was heartbreaking. So I feel like there was an opportunity there for a dentist to be more creative with the solution. I'm not sure if it was a crown or if it was a RCT, root canal therapy, something to help your patients, my family member, be able to enjoy a hamburger, right? Those are simple solutions that patients are unable to do. Now they're left with because a tooth extraction costs maybe $180, right? So clearly the decision was motivated by money. And maybe you did offer in-office financing, but $180 still seemed like the more appealing option. But now that they've committed to the extraction, now the only remedy that we can do is an implant, right? And the implant costs more than $2,000. Now they're left with even more expense, right? They've already committed to the $180 tooth extraction, and now they've got to add another $2,000 to get an implant. But a dentist will tell their patient, well, this is a temporary fix and you can come in at any time to do this implant. Well, I've got plenty of family members who have been walking around for years and not do the implant. So as an office, maybe you've got a whole patient panel that you've done tooth extractions, and hopefully you're taking great records on, and then also the follow-up for your front office staff, following up with patients. Sometimes patients just forget, or maybe some patients feel, downtrodden because they think, oh, I've already committed to this. And the dentist, and maybe they'll remember that the dentist told them this is just a temporary fix, and that after a while you'll see bone atrophy and there won't be anything to really implant the device into, implant the tooth into. It's sad to me that when I see other family members when they're trying to eat soup and then there's a little bit of a dribble because the soup is escaping through that hole, right? I think that there's a lot of untapped opportunity for dentists. The second lesson that I learned was get ahead of the communication. With my buddy, I was always the one to initiate the communication, reaching out to him and saying, hey, how are we doing? How are we doing? How are we doing? It wasn't until the point where I threatened him to say, hey, I'm going to go with another vendor who can actually fulfill the need that I have. So as a dentist, we need to get ahead of the communication. Perhaps as the patient is sitting there in our chair with their mouth open, a lot of dentists try to do small talk as though that's something that the patient wants to hear. It's nice to build that rapport and be personal with the patient, but also remember why the patient is there in the first place. They're there to get their teeth taken care of. And a lot of dentists, they don't do that. They don't get ahead of the communication, try to express to the patient what they're seeing. Probably maybe the assistant or the hygienist has already expressed concern about their hygiene, about their oral care, the frequency of brushing their teeth and flossing, how important that is to do that every day. And so as a dentist, as you're communicating what you're seeing and most likely validating, verifying what the hygienist or the assistant has already expressed and the concerns that they see, when they pull up the picture and you're going through the x-rays, and then it's not a surprise at that time when you do discover that they do have, they do need a filling, they do need a crown, they do need a root canal therapy or an implant. It's not a surprise to them. And so getting ahead of the communication, and hopefully by doing that, you'll see a higher conversion rate on your case acceptance rate. And higher case acceptance rate means better dental health outcomes. I have fewer family members walking around there with holes in their teeth, right? It's just overall better. For the health of your practice, you'll see higher revenue, higher production. All of those things come from improved communication. The third one is refining my decision-making process. When I looked at the decision that I made to go with my buddy, what was the best outcome that can happen? Best outcome that can happen is that My buddy got another client to serve, but also I got what I needed, a tablecloth to go over at the table, right? But for me, what the upside with going with my friend versus somebody else, there wasn't really much, right? Now, the opposite question of what's the worst that can happen? And the worst that can happen happened. Like I said, I did speak with my buddy, did clear the air, and the reason why I shared with him my experience was I was frustrated, but also I cared about him. I wanted to see him succeed. I wanted to see him thrive. I know his family, and so it was a personal thing, and so I wasn't wanting to be just critical, but also constructive. And hopefully, through my experience, I'm fine. But for him, this is his livelihood, and hopefully, the bad experience that I had is isolated, localized to just me. As much as that sucks, hopefully it's not happening on a recurring basis with every one of his clients. And same thing for you as a dental practice owner. What's the best thing that can happen if I were to offer these options, these treatment options for my patients? And what's the worst thing that can happen, right? When you have a good, sound decision-making process in place, it really improves and your outcomes. More fair to yourself, reduce the frustration that you have as a business owner, as a provider, and also improves your outcomes for your goals that you want to achieve. And so those are the three things that I wanted to reach out to you and share through this experience of being a vendor at the Utah Dental Association, and look forward to more videos with you in the future. Thanks. Bye.